Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series in officially licensed cars engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to SimSpeed TV's coverage of the Südspeed Sportscar Series, where tonight we grab the bull by its horns in Austria as we giddy up for a 1-hour race around the Red Bull Ring in our beautiful Ligier LMP3 cars. Fuel saving will be a key factor tonight, but based on how this season has gone so far, don't expect nothing less than flat-out racing from green flag to checkered flag tonight. I'm Bo Albert, and tonight I'm joined once again by Reese Gardner as we take you through tonight's action, all broadcasted live thanks to the behind-the-scenes work of Jay Kennedy. Reese, we've had plenty of round formats so far this season with 2 races, but tonight, mix it up, and the drivers get just one single opportunity to take that top step of the podium.
Absolutely. This is a semi-endurance round of the series happening here at the Red Bull Ring, an hour's race, and we're expecting one full pit stop plus a splash and dash. We'll see how things go there. Fuel cap to 48% for these drivers. But I think we should take a closer look at the Red Bull Ring itself. What a track to have such a race format at, Bo. Plenty of opportunities for slipstreaming and potentially saving fuel.
Yep, absolutely. It's a high-speed circuit, but with some very big braking zones. That means lift and coast is going to be a huge factor here tonight. Of course, the elevation change makes it all the more easy to just get that draft, make it a bit more effective than usual, and also maybe throw a lunge up the inside of your competitors on this track, which only contains 10 corners in a clockwise direction. But don't let that fool you, because by all means, this is a very technical circuit race.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's obviously an FIA Grade 1 venue. The particular layout of the circuit was first introduced in 1997. You can see the outline of the old Österreichring to the left of your screen that this track used to be configured as. Generally, it's a circuit that's defined by hard braking zones and placing a lot of importance on traction out of those slow corners. You do have to have a car that handles nicely through medium speed bends as well for turns 6, 7, 8, and 9. But other than that, it's all about getting the power down, making sure your car is stable under brakes.
Yep, it definitely is. And already a lot of drivers in qualifying right now are struggling with that balance just a little bit, finding themselves spinning around or looping it in the high-speed section because, of course, with the long straights we have here at the circuit, lots of drivers on low downforce. Take a look at your championship standings, and once again, it is all Sebastian Vandel at the top of the leaderboard. But just before we jump into the rest of the championship standings, worth noting, as we stand currently 8 minutes into qualifying, Vandel is currently not in the session. So is this the opportunity for Brandon Groach in position number 2 to start hunting down that championship lead?
That is the question. We'll see if Seb can get into the session and continue his very awesome run that he's had this season. Honestly, if he is a no-show, that's going to be a huge leg up for Brandon Groach. He is 35 points behind in championship standings with only a few rounds left to go. We also see that it's very close in the latter part of the top 10 as well. It's going to be a fun one, this one, Bo. As you said, had 9 minutes and 30 seconds elapsed in qualifying so far. Brandon Groach currently the quickest on track right now. Not by much from John Bradshaw, though.
Yeah, and not at all from Vinny Nguyen, who goes P1 with a great lap time, but by the smallest of margins to now make it just 0.04 of a second between our top 4 cars. How close do you like it? Well, very close in the Südspeed Sportscar Series. We're on board with Brandon Groach right now. Can he get the redemption and get that pole position back once more through this very fast intersection of the lap? You can see in third gear there, immediately up into fourth. A bit of a wiggle there as well. Lots of corners where the car is just constantly loaded on the outside tires can generate a lot of slip the longer it goes on. Into the final 2 quarters, you can see using a lot of track, but I dare say that might be a little too far, and maybe this lap won't count. We'll see as he goes across the start-finish line now. He needs a 1:26.6 to beat, and as I thought, no lap time recorded this time around, but still plenty of time to push for a couple more.
Yeah, that's something that the drivers will have to look out for quite a bit here at the Red Bull Ring, is the off-tracks. Generally, the track limits are the curbs, the red and white striped curbs on the outside of the circuit. As long as you have 2 wheels on those, you are good. You can't go beyond them, though, and put all of your car on the green stuff. Otherwise, you will have your lap time invalidated. And that also plays into the incident limit in the race as well. Every time you go beyond track limits, you get a 1x incident point for going off track. You only get 30 incidents before you get a drive-through in the 1-hour race.
Yep, and around this track, as you were touching on, Reese, it is so easy to pick up that many incident points, so the drivers will have to look out for that, especially with some maybe 4x contacts on a circuit that definitely promotes close racing. So we'll see how that all pans out across the night, but something to keep an eye on for sure, because drive-through penalties for breaching that incident cap will be race-breaking by all means. Another look at Brandon Groach in the 22 now into the final 2 corners. We'll see if this lap is any improvement whatsoever for him as he keeps it in track limits this time around. Oh, a little bit of a slip at the mid-corner.
No.
Holds on to it, though. I think maybe we'll get away with it. It'll be tight. But across the line, and no lap time again for the 22. So the pressure perhaps just getting to him a little bit on the night where Vardell has not shown.
Yeah, that's very interesting for Brandon Groach. We'll have to keep an eye out there. Keeping an eye on Daniel Finney in the Bean machine, as well as Eric Fenson in the bright blue machine here. He's one of the drivers in this server that does not have a time on the board. Cameron Edwards and Mark Hallowell, they were in the server at some point, but have yet to make an appearance in practice or qualifying. So Eric right now is running last, and the only driver that doesn't have a time on the board. We're keeping an eye on the 6th place car of Dylan Walker, who absolutely burst onto the scene last round at Aragon. Starting a hot lap now, coming into this first turn, which is a very difficult one to get right, Bo. You have to really nail the apex and be careful of the curbs on the exit in these stiff suspension cars.
Yeah, absolutely. As we saw there from Walker, if you do go a little bit too wide, you can bottom the car out quite violently, and that's going to just kill your exit speed all the way through that pointless turn 2 and into the big braking zone of turn number 3. But it's all about carrying the momentum. It's one of those corners, strip it back to basics, slow in, fast out. Your mid-corner speed and your entry speed, honestly, doesn't really matter. Just get that exit speed going, and you should be A-okay. As we take a look at Eric Fenson now, as you mentioned, one of the drivers without a lap time currently. Got 2 corners to go, and what is his 6th lap of the session? Is this perhaps the lap where he can hook it up and get a time on the board? Because we have seen some great pace from him throughout the season. Hasn't had the best results, unfortunately, due to a couple of incidents, not always through his own fault. But nonetheless, a top 10 starting spot will do the doctor. Absolutely no worries at all.
Yes, he was 9th for a second there, but Brendan Morris just behind him, going slightly faster. Peter Smith, meanwhile, extending the circuit out here at the end of another lap. He keeps it within track limits on the exit of the final corner. Nicely done. Is this an improvement on 5th place? Looks like it will be if it counts.
Yep, improved time, no place.
It certainly does. Improved time, but no improvement in place.
I believe the gap
does
versus
bring the gap
5th.
down, though.
That is so painful, though. The fact that he put in a lap within 7/100ths of pole position and he's on the third roll of the grid. That is painful, Peter Smith, and that is his session over, unfortunately. Not enough time for completing laps. Of course, with this session not being a heat, it does mean that if you do start a lap before the checkered flag is out, do get the ability to finish it. So that's something for these drivers to factor in. Vinny Nguyen starts his final lap of the session now. We'll take a look at Andrew Proctor, currently 19th at the moment. And I'm sure there'll be plenty of room for improvement there. He'll be looking to move up the order just a little bit.
P1.
And we'll see how he goes. As wow, we've just seen a lap punched in there by Brandon Groach to the top of the timesheets, and he smashes them by 1/10.5.
Good job there from Brandon Groach, grabbing provisional pole position right at the end of the session. Checkered flag is out, and looks like a couple of drivers going very slowly across the line. Andrew Proctor, though, is going to come to the end of his lap in just a couple of corners' time. 128.6. He is in last place at the moment. Would prefer it if he could get into the 127s and be more on the pace with those around him, but he's going to abandon that final lap, bring it into the lane. Vinny Nguyen, meanwhile, that's an off track. I think that might be lap over.
Yeah, I think it might be as well. So he might continue the lap, we'll see, or he might just go for a little bit of a pit entry practice as well. I'm seeing Jacques Swampole across the line there, see if there was any improvement there. I'm not too sure if it was, but nonetheless. And actually, he did gain a couple of spots. That's good there for him, as Vinny Nguyen does indeed decide to elect for some last-minute pit entry practice, which is a factor that we'll touch on many more times before the pit stops take their place. Now, 1 hour race that will begin in just a little while. But first, let's take a look at our qualifying results and our grid for our one and only race tonight. And it is led away by Brandon Groach with that last-minute lap that he punched in, a 126.4. Very good effort to separate himself by 1/10.5 over Vinny Nguyen, but that is a gap that if he continues that pace during the race, well, you won't be breaking the draft with that. John Bradshaw in position number 3 ahead of David Turnbull, who will join him on the second row of the grid, with Peter Smith joining the third row of the grid and making a top 5 appearance once more. Dylan Walker in position number 6 as well. Good effort there for the driver in just his second round, going for his second win in 3 races. Dean Powell kicks things off tonight in position number 7 with Henry Fenson in 8th place. Good effort there from Henry. He will start ahead of Brenton Morris in 9th and Eric Fenson, Henry's brother, in 10th.
Starting in 11th, Owen Pyra, who is reporting that the track is running fast tonight, though some people are disagreeing with him. Jacques Swanpole starts alongside him. Daniel Finney in lucky 13th starts alongside Dean Hunt, with Keith McClymont making his way out of 15th alongside Mark Foster, Leith, the new driver to the series for the Pelin Axiom Racing team. Then Sean Bonici and Michael Schroeder will share the 9th row of the grid, and Andrew Proctor on his lonesome in the 19th and last spot. Cam Edwards and Mark Hallowell not making appearances in qualifying, and I would suspect that they are not going to take to the grid, Bo.
No, it doesn't seem to be that's going to be happening for those guys, which is a shame to see, but nonetheless, we still have 19 very quick cars to take on this race. So it'll be good to see, as the track is currently 39 degrees, so it's not the coolest track ever, so they'll have to manage the tyres somewhat over the course of this race, but we do know the tyres do hold up fairly well in this car. It's just a bit of that warm-up phase more than anything they'll have to deal with, which if they decide to pit, which they're going to have to with the fuel restrictions in place, taking tyres, yes or no? That is going to be the question, and if they do, that warm-up phase is something they're going to have to contend with twice during the race.
Yeah, and the question is that worth the extra tyre life it gives you? You're obviously going to be slowed down a little bit in the initial warm-up phase. Meanwhile, we have to remind you, this series is created by Südspeed, new Australian company that sells sim racing gloves and apparel. You can use the code SportscarSpectator for 10% off, including free shipping. Thank you very much, Südspeed.
Yeah, not a bad deal at all. Great to see. And of course, they did recently open up their shipping options as well. So no matter where you are in the world, not just for those in Australia, you will be able to get yourself a pair of Südspeed gloves. But if you want them for free, well, you might have to join this season, because there is plenty of prizes up for grabs. Of course, a round winner for each event will get a pair of Südspeed gloves, as well as our drivers of the day, which is voted by us in the commentary booth, receiving a Südspeed t-shirt race.
Yep, fantastic little prize there. We've awarded a driver of the day at every round so far, and this round is certainly no different. Of course, there's also trophies and cash on the line for the top 5, the trophy going to the championship winner. So, depending on whether or not Brandon Groach can capitalize on the absence of Sebastian Vandel this race, he might put himself truly in the race for that $200 cash prize. But even if he doesn't, he'll still be up for $150.
Yeah, not a bad few prizes at all, so we'll see how that all pans out. Worth noting as well regarding our championship, the series does feature one drop round as well. So Vandel not being here tonight, which does seem to be confirmed at this point in time, not a total disaster for Vandel, but that is still one less opportunity for him to score points. So there it is without the drops currently, and you can see the points is actually far more open. It's almost
extended his championship lead.
By far, that's without drops, so almost an 80-point lead there over Brandon Groach. But if we then quickly slide over to what it is with drop rounds, we'll see it condenses so much more, and Vandel's lead is so much more reduced. So he's still got a decent amount of points over the course of this season. Of course, still leading by all means, but missing tonight, not worst case scenario.
Righto, cool. All right, got myself a little confused there. Sorry for the confusion in the commentary box. That is your reminder. So Sebastian Vandel not racing, that means that he drops one round, and that is 0 points dropped. His points total likely staying the same coming out of this round. Just a minute or so left in warm-up, and we have plenty of drivers out there, including John Bradshaw, who's joining us on Zoom tonight. It'll be interesting to see where he comes from third on the grid. An excellent qualifying performance for him.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see how he can contend it with some of our more usual front runners, but nonetheless, he'll be very competitive, I am sure, as will the hopes of Dean Powell, who I believe, get my timing screen up, starting from position number 7. So actually, both our drivers who are running the webcams for tonight, quite high up in the field as well. So if you want to get yourself a bit higher up on the grid next week, guys, make sure you jump on the Zoom. It's great to see you guys work the wheel in these races, and makes it highly entertaining as well. So be sure to jump into that. But nonetheless, another quick announcement from the guys at Südspeed as well, which broke just after round number 4, was that we're going to be having an endurance race coming up, Reese, around Zolder.
Indeed, the Zolder 500. That's going to be taking place on the 10th of December. So if you're interested, make sure to jump in and sign up. It's going to be a very fun race. We've got 8 entries for that so far, and you and me, Bo, were actually debating whether or not we're going to team up and race in it, but then we'd be leaving Jay in the commentary box all by himself. So not sure what's going to happen there, but I think we'll have to have a couple of chats about that. In any case, it looks like we are in the race session now. We can get going for an hour's race here at the Red Bull Ring.
Yep, that is the hope as the drivers get set for what is a very short pace lap here at the Red Bull Ring in just 3 minutes time. So the drivers still get a couple more minutes to try and get themselves sorted on this grid. Worth noting, the track temp has come down by a whopping 2 degrees. So although not too dramatic at this stage in time, that is a decent trend to keep an eye on if it does keep getting cooler across the race length. Maybe that will help the tires out ever so slightly, as we see some of our drivers there funneling onto the grid now behind the iRacing Porsche safety car. Reese, 1 hour race, 1 stop is guaranteed, but we're looking at a splash and dash at some point as well if you're not able to fuel save, which we're expecting to be about a 7-litre fuel save, so pretty significant to try and avoid that splash and dash. How do you approach this? Do you go flat out, or do you try and save even just a little bit of fuel, even if you don't save the splash and dash, but you're still going to be saving time in the pits?
Yeah, I would take safety car potential into account as well. You know, this being a longer race, there's potential for fatigue to set in for a few drivers. So I think there's going to be potential for at least 1 safety car in this race. And that could give you quite the opportunity to save the fuel that you need, at least a significant portion of it. So maybe just drive as you would. Don't go completely flat out right at the start. Just get your pit stop done, and if there's a late safety car, then maybe start backing off. It'll be interesting to see how it pans out.
Yeah, definitely will, because so far this season, all we've really seen is flat out racing. Even in the few times we thought maybe in the race 2 events where they are fuel limited, that maybe they'll take it a bit easier or a bit more cautious. They don't. They still keep fighting just as hard, and has made for some very entertaining battles, but some very poor fuel economy. So with fuel being such a talking point for tonight, who is thinking about the fuel mileage a little bit more than their competitors? That's what we'll have to find out. And already just interesting to see that a couple of drivers jumping onto the grid already, or some electing to grid as late as possible, so it's a couple more seconds your car isn't idling, just ticking away slowly at that fuel gauge.
Yeah, exactly. That's a big point of contention for races like this. You have to be careful of how much fuel you have in your car at the very start. Looks like the majority of them are on the grid at the moment, and well, with just one more grid spot free, there we go. It's been filled all the way at the back. Last driver to join the grid is Sean Benici, and just 10 seconds left on the grid time. We can finally get this race started. Rolling start behind the pace car. Brandon Groach certainly set to capitalize and try and take victory here, but Vinnie Nguyen and John Bradshaw certainly very quick, and I mean, the second to fifth all covered by just under 0.07 of a second. I think race pace is going to be very close too. It's going to be a fantastic battle in the top 5.
Even beyond the top 5 was going to be great as well. You can see 6th place in qualifying was a 26.9. 10th place, so 5 cars back, was still a 27.0. So already throughout this field, the gaps are oh so small. And when you factor in the slipstream around a track like this, I think we're set for 1 hour of fantastic racing at a track that, yes, features 10 corners, but features more than its fair share of drama. The iRacing Porsche safety car peels off to the right and hands over control to Brandon Groach, who's going to hold the field nice and steady at 95 kilometers an hour currently, awaiting the green flag to put his foot on the floor and get us set for round number 5 of the Südspeed Sportscar Series. Cars on the grass already f***ing out, trying to get the jump on their competitors as we funnel into turn 1. Very late on the brakes, goes through it. He goes into the back of our race leader, Groach, who luckily survives for now. Chaos already, as it's side by side for 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and just about every other place in this field. 2x2 NASCAR style. There we go into turn number 3. Big dive on the inside for the 999 of Team Power. Contact is made for one of the cars, and that scatters the field across turn number 3.
That's David Turnbull, who got spun around there, and it looks like just re-entering the racetrack ahead of him, potentially Andrew Proctor. So we already have 2 cars with big issues at the start of this race. It looks like Vinnie Nguyen does have damage to his front right. He is still moving, though. Unfortunately, looks to me like he might just be crabbing a little bit, depending on what I'm seeing, but potentially not. These cars can be very tough, but pretty orderly lap 1 so far, apart from the 2 Fenson brothers, Henry and Eric, going into the grass off the start. They have resumed running nicely.
Yep, they definitely have, which is great to see. Of course, with no safety cars currently expected in this race, besides an incident, you want to see the field nice and compact at the start, which is just about what we've got, and not too much separation at all, which is great to see. So plenty of battles coming up over the next couple of laps. We are expecting this race to be somewhere in the almost the high 30s or low 40s, I believe. So quite a long amount of laps in tonight's races. Oh, there goes Eric Fenson. So the Fenson brothers get separated now as Eric goes for a big slide at turn number 1. And thankfully, plenty of runoff available here at the circuit. He can rejoin nicely without any contact on the wall. The only issue, well, is dumped down to 16th place.
Yeah, that's a shame there for Eric, and it looks to me like he did that all on his own. 2x2, meanwhile, coming out of the hairpin. We have Owen Pyra chasing Brenton Morris there, and Daniel Finney in very close pursuit as well. Dean Hunt trying to make himself a part of this battle too. Up the inside then might go Owen Pyra here, but this is a corner where the outside line can be to your benefit. However, it looks like Owen has managed to get it straightened up and on the power nice and quick, and He'll actually gain a bit of an advantage over Brenton Morris there going into the corner. So Owen, 4 positions up already, up to 7th place. Here's a replay at the start, Bo, and the first thing we'll see, obviously, is the Fenson brothers fanning out and catching the grass, but we're just looking at...
Absolutely. So was it a braking misjudgment, or was it a lock-up? We will see. I think it was just a misjudgment, unfortunately, which is so easy to do on the race starts because A, you don't know when the leader's going to brake, B, you also have cold tyres, and unfortunately just contacted Peter Smith there in turn number 3, and that sent that driver around, which is very unfortunate to see. So lots of drivers with an impacted start, unfortunately, at the moment, but some already, like David Turnbull, making a bit of a recovery nice and quickly.
Yep, chasing down Andrew Proctor here for 15th place. They've got a bit of a gap ahead to everyone else, and they do have the recovering Eric Fenson just behind them as well. So this is going to be an interesting fight between these 3. They don't want to get in each other's way, try and catch their way up to everyone else in front of them. And, well, obviously you don't want to be using that line too much. David Turnbull making his way onto the runoff area slightly. Other than that, looks like single file is the order of the day. We're not seeing any big moves. Of course, it makes sense. It's an hours-long race. You need to be careful in the opening laps.
Yeah, you definitely do. It's an age-old saying, and I'm sure plenty of people get sick of it from time to time, but the reality is just can't win a race on the very first lap. So these drivers got to be careful, just build into a rhythm at the moment, and being in our race as well, fatigue will be a factor like you mentioned in the pre-race there, Reece. So these drivers need to find a groove nice and early, not burn yourselves out. It is very real that you could find yourself making a lot of mistakes come the end of this race. So don't overdrive too early, just build it in nice and slow as we start lap number 4 now. And a lot of drivers still, like you say, just single file, not really fighting one another, which is great to see. One little battle that is a bit close is, I'm just seeing David Turnbull there has spun at the final corner. So from bad to worse from David Turnbull, unfortunately. It's been a rough start for him. Let's get a SimSpeed or a Südspeed replay here and work out what exactly is taking place. So I believe that's one of the Fenson brothers behind, but I think there may have been contact. It was very hard to tell.
On my screen, it looks like he lost it coming into the corner, and then hitting the inside curb just exacerbated it for him. That's unfortunate. Oh, I'm seeing some problems for Brandon Groach. He has gone off at the second hairpin. No, actually, he's disappeared.
Yeah, is he disconnected? Oh, I'm looking at his internet stats.
It was Bradshaw that went off.
Yeah, so Bradshaw off the road, but Groach having technical issues. And, well, if you understand iRacing at all, the quality is now down to just 38. So big drivers and...
That's interesting.
There's something larger to Groach's internet issues. This isn't a straight internet throughput from what I can see currently. This is a big technical issue because I've never seen a car with an internet issue just pull off to the side like that.
Yeah, I've never seen it either. Well, that basically means that our top 2 came together. Bradshaw, I think, caught out by Groach slowing down and then couldn't turn in for the corner because he didn't know where he was. And the net effect of that is that Dean Powell's been promoted to the race lead. Henry Fenson chasing him down to 2nd. Peter Smith up into 3rd. Yeah,
it's all a little bit flip-flop now, so we'll see how this all pans out. So we can see a nice little battle here happening towards turn number 3 as Schroeder getting passed by Dylan Walker there. So Walker just making a bit of a comeback now after what I've got to say was a bit of a lazy start by all means. Or started in 6th, currently recovering to 10th place, but still losing a lot of positions there. It's just behind these guys, Eric Fenson and Brenton Morris side by side, but Eric Fenson going to win that one pretty easily into the braking zone.
Yeah, Eric's on a pretty good recovery right now. He's up to only 2 positions down from where he started, and he is looking mighty quick. Even though he was hard racing with the drivers around him, he still took 7/10 of a second out of Schroeder, and even more than that out of Dylan Walker. So now he needs to get into the rhythm, make sure that he keeps the tyres nice and clean. Don't get too many off tracks. That is the main thing here. We've got to keep an eye on that 30 incident limit as Brenton Morris defends there from Andrew Proctor, who's trying to get a move done in the second last corner. Ultimately, it did not work out for him.
All right, so we'll go back and take a look at what has happened here to Brenton Morris. As well, a big snap at the last minute there, and a very good catch, I've got to say, because when a car is lost at that kind of a speed, it is very difficult to catch a lot of times. As you got Dean Hunt here, who finds himself side by side defending from Jacques Swampole, going around the outside, which is a long way around the outside. But very often you can find yourself getting some decent drive out of that corner. Hasn't paid off for Swampole this time around. Still has a little bit of overspeed. Will it be enough for a late dive into this next corner? It's not. But nonetheless, a good attempt from Jacques there. It's a little bit too far around the outside as Fenson, I believe that is, Eric, yep, up the inside of Michael Schroeder. Another lap, another place gained.
Yeah, good stuff there. Meanwhile, Owen Pyra and Daniel Finney fighting over 5th and 6th right now. Jacques Swampole falling down on this lap and no longer a part of this battle. Finney, though, with an excellent run out of the infield section of the circuit. Not quite close enough to go for a dive at the second last corner. And as they come past the pit entry, that's something, again, that I wanted to bring up, Bo, is the nature of pit entry at this track. You are slowing down on the racing line to get into the pit lane here, and the second last corner where you enter is blind. So I think the drivers that are close in a battle will be right on their toes, ready to dip out of the way.
Yeah, they're going to have to be, because how many times have we seen an incident from one driver going into the pit lane, driver behind not fully understanding the situation, and unfortunately just plows into the back of them and causes a very nasty shunt on the pit entry. So one thing I've got to say about this series is the drivers do seem to have fairly good communication on both voice chat and text chat and all other sources they can use. So hopefully we won't see any of those issues tonight. But when you come to a track like this and at Montreal, where of course we did see a pit entry incident. I don't quite remember who the drivers involved that time around were, but I do remember seeing an incident at Montreal where that exact scenario played out. One driver thought to dive into the pits, the other driver decided to take the racing line, and it all went a little bit pear-shaped. As we take a look at Henry Fenson, I do believe, who has Peter Smith behind, and Dean Powell up ahead, who of course is our race leader now. So working their way through the gorgeous Styrian mountainside. It is really a beautiful landscape this circuit resides on, and some pretty cool architecture, I've got to say, as well as.
Yeah, that sculpture is certainly one of the highlights of this track, apart from the track itself, which I think has a beautiful flow layout, and it's been preserved, even though it has been tightened up and modified over the years. Coming out of turn 1, the battle for the lead still on between Dean Powell, Henry Fenson and Peter Smith. John Bradshaw, meanwhile, looks like trying to... he's actually lost out quite a bit there at turn 1. Potentially a slowdown there for Bradshaw, who, remember, started in 3rd and has been right up there. Daniel Finney and Dean Hunt both catch the sausage curve on the outside of the hairpin. Tractionals here. Change for the lead, meanwhile. Dean Powell defending from Henry Fenson. They traded places a couple of times. Henry had a go at him, it seems, around the outside.
Yeah, that one sort of snuck up on us a little bit, but nonetheless, a great pass from Dean Powell. And he will continue as we go to a Südspeed replay here for number 3 car, John Bradshaw. Very wide I do know from experience, unfortunately, that there is a slowdown out there, and I think that pulling off to the right of track tells us everything we need to know. As we'll go back and take a look at, I believe this is the pass for the lead, and see exactly how it took place.
Yeah, there was an attempt by Henry Fenson on the racing line, late on the brakes. He was ahead for a moment, but it was well defended there from Dean Powell. And the effect of all of that is Fenson has lost some crucial time and is now under pressure from Smith for second.
Yeah, it's all tightened up quite a lot, and they've got to be careful as well, because just last lap around, Owen Pyra did set the fastest lap of the race as well, so the car in 4th has plenty of speed as well. So we'll see how this all pans out in the next couple of laps and see if it becomes our top fight, but last lap around anyway, Pyro wasn't taking any significant amount of times out of our current race leaders who find themselves fighting away as we go back to this battle, which does include Dean Hunt, John Bradshaw, Swanpole and Finney, and they're having a great little fight. And yeah, last lap around, Dean Hunt with a phenomenal catch out of turn number 3, a big slide, caught it over the anti-cut curb on the outside, so very lucky to hold on to it. Was the 47, but nonetheless, he holds his 8th place for now, and just hunting it down John Bradshaw at the moment, who we know has good pace. Just got to watch out for them slowdowns.
Yeah, exactly right. This is one of those tracks that, you know, as it's evolved and gotten tarmac runoffs in a lot of places, and obviously flat Formula One style curbs as well, it's certainly increased the amount you can take out of the track on the very limits of it, which means they have to put in those slowdown penalties just to make sure the drivers stay within the actual track limits. Bradshaw, meanwhile, trying to get on the recovery. He's had a bit of a rough race so far, under a lot of pressure from Dean Hunt. How is the exit from the first turn? Just catches the sausage curb on the exit, and you can see him looking in his mirrors there. He knows that Hunt is on the attack.
Yep, absolutely. So will Hunt go for a bit of a dive here at turn number 3? It's a long way back. He thought about the inside, decides to tuck back in and not go for any attempts this time around. Maybe set up for a move at turn number 4, but I've got to say, I think Bradshaw has had a pretty sizable exit there and should be able to hold on to this one for the next couple of corners. Battle behind looks a little bit closer between the likes of Mark Foster and Eric Fenson. Eric, of course, continuing his charge. He thinks about the inside and commits to it at the last moment. That was a little bit of a clumsy initial entry, and unfortunately Mark Foster, in all the confusion, just dips 2 wheels in the gravel, but nonetheless he did a great job avoiding Eric Fenson, who I think was a bit indecisive on exactly where he wanted to place his car.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to see that. Like, I get the feeling he thought he could stay behind, but realized that Foster was braking a little bit earlier than he anticipated, so he decided partway through to go for the move anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. So probably the better outcome in the end. He, of course, gained the position and more contact was made between the two. Bit of time loss for Foster, and that will all play out as we're seeing a bit of time lost between Fenson and Smith. The reason they're losing time? Well, they're battling away towards turn number 1, which is an interesting corner to fight at. I feel like it's probably not the best corner to go for a dive at, because you are just going to compromise yourself so much on the exit, which is where all that lap time is made. But nonetheless, they're also getting so much slipstream up that hill that it doesn't really matter. But what we might do is go to a Südspeed replay of Schroeder, and that's exactly why he was losing it into the final corner, and just a little touch at the end to finish it all off.
Yeah, Michael Schroeder was the driver that got into him, and Schroeder saying sorry in the InSim text chat, but I don't think he needed to. The car in front had already lost it by the time he was on his way in. So Proctor, another one of the drivers that has had multiple issues towards the start of this race, now running last. Here's another replay of Swanpole down at turn 3, and oh wow, just losing the rear on the way in. I mean, we saw it quite a bit at Aragon, didn't we? And we've seen it at almost every round this season, Bo. The downshifts in this car are incredibly hard to get right when you're turning into a corner. If you don't get it timed right, it will compression lock and the rear will lose.
Yeah, we've seen it so many times, as you said, and I think that's just our latest example, unfortunately. I think we'll see more in the coming rounds as well. It's just one of those situations that's going to keep popping up over the time as Dean Hunt goes or thinks about a move at turn number 1, pulls out, but doesn't quite commit to it, or stay behind for just another lap as well. But you can see just how much time he lost in that process. Going for a look up to the inside of turn 1, and it's not quite paid off because an opportunity at turn number 3 isn't going to come to him because he's lost so much of his exit speed. So maybe into turn number 4 he'll have a chance, but he has to watch his mirrors as well because Swanpole and Fenson, who is now caught up to this little battle pack, are waiting in the wings by all means. Fenson, of course, had issues at the start of the race on lap number 2, spinning off at turn number 1, but making a fairly good comeback drive. He's passed just about everybody he's needed to so far. And these next guys in front, all the way up to 6th place, just his next targets.
Yeah, exactly right. You can definitely say that Eric Fenson is now net positive for positions gained, up 1 place now, but that is largely due to Brandon Grotch's unfortunate retirement from this race due to technical issues. And you raise turn 1. It's such an open corner, and it's tempting to go for a move there, but unfortunately, it is open to the point that if you do look up the inside, you've got that entire straight after to lose time down. I think if you're close behind someone coming into the first turn, you're better off just sitting behind them, taking advantage of the slipstream into the hairpin, but apparently no one has told Eric Fenson that, because he's just gone past Jacques Swanpole into the first corner and actually gotten the move done nicely.
Yeah, he has, and you actually saw Swanpole there just bog it out a little bit on the outside curb. And I think that's really what hurt the exit speed there. But we might even turn our attention a bit higher up, as Dean Hunt thought about the inside of Bradshaw, who runs it a bit wide on the exit and then gets the anti-cut as well. So his exit's been compromised. We've got 2 side-by-side battles now following one another. We'll focus on Hunt and Bradshaw at the moment, because Hunt's been trying this one for a long time, not late enough on the brakes. Swanpole is late enough on the brakes, and Eric Fenson running a little bit wide just helps his case.
Yeah, the track's still not fully rubbered in yet from what I can see, so if you're on the outside coming into turn 4, and it's better to just ease off and let the other guy go. I think towards the end of the race, we might be seeing the outside be a reasonable place to defend and attempt passes. We'll have to wait and see for that. Owen Pyra continuing on in 4th place, and I mean up 7 spots from his start. It's just fantastic to see that Owen Pyra is looking incredibly competitive in race conditions here. I think he's being helped by the top 3 potentially getting some aero push and slowing each other up.
Yeah, a little bit, but to some degree as well. I've got a little statistic on my timing screen here that I use to track driver's pace every now and then. To give you guys an idea, over the last 5 laps, our top 3 have averaged a 27.2, a 27.2, and a 27.3, whereas Owen Pyra in 4th, 27.0. So every lap on average, he's taking at least 0.2 a lap out of them. So he has phenomenal pace right now, and he's obviously closing on our top 3. He's going to get the drafts very, very soon. Is Owen Pyra the dark horse here to potentially snag a race win in round 5 of the Südspeed Sportscar Series?
Yeah, his pace has looked phenomenal in this first stint, and there's also potential that the top 3 might just be managing their fuel at the moment. They're not really attacking each other now. We did see them attack each other a bit earlier. Meanwhile, Eric Fenson getting the move done finally on Jacques Swanpole. He initially went up the inside at turn 3, got it completed at turn 4. Nicely done. But yeah, potentially Owen Pyra is just throwing any form of fuel saving to the wind and is pushing as hard as he can to try and jet up to the top 3.
Yep, absolutely. But just as I make that point about him catching our top 3, they have all started to respond now with some very quick laps. I think most of them did, unfortunately, apart from Dean Powell, pick up an incident point on that particular lap. So Fenson did do a 27.0 and a 26.9 for Peter Smith there. So although Pyra doesn't close up on our top 3, the top 3 themselves have condensed ever so slightly here. So this is interesting, and see how this will all pan out. I've got to say, Henry Fenson is the closest to Dean Powell he has been all race long so far, it feels like. You can see from Dean Powell's perspective, great to see him on the webcam. He's having to work hard to try and keep the number 10 car behind.
Yeah, you can see that he's taking deep breaths in between corners, isn't he? He knows that, oh, that's a mistake there. A little bit of a wiggle for Henry Fenson. That's going to lose him 2nd spot. Through goes Peter Smith. That's the thing about these turns in the middle of the course. If you just get a little bit of the disturbance in the rear, then that will certainly send you off into the gravel trap, if not lose you a lot of time besides. And despite Fenson trying to come back at Smith, unfortunately, he has completely lost 2nd, and that has really brought Owen Pyra into the fight for the top 3. Here's the onboard.
So he turns into the corner. Oh, looks, just a big snap in the mid-corner. There wasn't really anything that particularly led up to that. I didn't see any harsh downshift or any rough braking or locking that I could really particularly see. So it's a big snap out of nowhere there. And that cost the driver big there and cost him second place, as well as Eric Fenson punches in the fastest lap of the race, now getting us down to a 26.6, which is a great pace. I believe that lap time would have put him fourth on the grid. So very competitive indeed, and he'll continue his fight through the field. His next target, of course, is, well, I was going to say it is Dean Hunt, but it's not Dean Hunt, because Dean Hunt has got past John Bradshaw now. Those two have swapped around, and Eric Fenson now going to try and get past the number 3 car.
Yeah, Bradshaw trying to hold on, but we're hearing that Bradshaw got a slowdown, unfortunately, and for the driver that started third, the race has not been going his way, has it? No surprise to see that it happened at the final turn. You get a little bit of understeer on the way into that final corner, and you have no choice but to lift off the throttle and serve that penalty. This is all working out wonderfully for Eric Fenson. The unfortunate mistake he made at turn 1 starting to look like a distant memory.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see how this all pans out as we go on board with Owen Pyro now, and is well and truly in the draft now of Henry Fenson ahead. So see what Fenson can do, and if he can regain his composure and get back up to our top 2. But at the moment, Peter Smith punching in some great laps at a 26.8 last time around, 4/10 quicker than our leader. So Peter Smith definitely has the pace this time around. As Pyro there, you can see on the onboard getting a little closer there, as actually our race leader, yeah, Dean Powell locks it up in towards turn number 3. And is this the opportunity for Peter Smith in the slipstream now, but decides to not really use the slipstream? So is this maybe the fuel save game you're talking about, Reese? Is Peter Smith thinking, I don't want to go for an overtake here. I'm quite happy with my far reduced fuel consumption sitting behind someone in the slipstream.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, there's the lock-up here for Dean Powell. Just landed the corner a little too deep. And I think the momentum that Peter was carrying out of the corner would have been enough to go for the move. But yeah, they're getting into the phase of the race now where they're thinking about where they're going to be in terms of the fuel-saving strategy. So probably best to just sit behind. For a second there, I thought Powell was going to go for the pits. That looked like a lot of speed down in the second last corner, but apparently not.
No, not at all. They're all still running around this time. So no one's thinking about the fuel just yet as we work lap 18 of the race now. So definitely getting on in our fuel consumption. By all means, I can't imagine that have too much longer in the tank. But yeah, we'll see how this all pans out. I'm trying to see if it's set anywhere. Oh, there we go. So our admin there, Richard Mayer, has said roughly 21 laps we're expecting on a tank of fuel here. So they've only got about 4 or so laps left in them before they really need to start thinking about diving into the pits. But yeah, at least the Plymouth there, I believe, involved in his little battle, got past Dylan Walker. But back up to this little battle pack now, as we'll see if there's any position swaps here as we go on board with Bradshaw. And he's just been passed by Eric Fenson. So, sorry guys, I'm trying to keep up with all this. But Eric Fenson has made up another move there, but squirrely under brakes as well. So he's finally got past John Bradshaw, another person down in Eric Fenson's recovery drive. Next up, Dean Hunt, who has had some good progress in this race as well.
Yeah, brilliant progress that Hunt has made, up 8 positions along with Daniel Finney, and it looks like those two hold the joint title of most positions gained in the race so far. Bradshaw just trying to chase them down here, stay in the slipstream. Don't forget that Bradshaw, with the run that he has had so far, probably carrying a slight bit of damage to the car in addition to all of the off-tracks and slowdowns that he's gotten so far. So what he's going to be focusing on now is keeping it clean, avoiding a potential drive-through.
Well, you're going to have to, because we're seeing drive-through times in the realm of about 18 seconds. For one of our drivers, let's say one of our drivers in the lead pack right now did manage to get a drive-through penalty, that's going to drop them all the way down to 13th place, I believe. So they're going to plummet through the field. So a drive-through penalty, well, that should just highlight just how painful it is. It's not something you can afford. One driver trying to avoid a drive-through penalty is Henry Fenson, and in order to avoid a drive-through penalty. He's not going to be aggressive whatsoever with Peter Smith. I really thought he was going to try and set up a move there, but thought absolutely nothing of it and just choosing to sit behind there as, ooh, you've caught something, Reese.
I have caught a message in the InSim text chat. Henry Fenson saying he's going to be pitting in. Dean Hunt saying the same thing. Mistake for Peter Smith, meanwhile, in the middle complex of the lap. So we're hearing the initial calls from drivers that they're going to pit in, and makes sense that they would say, yeah, they're all pitting, all letting each other know so that they don't run into the back of each other if they decide to stay out. In goes our leader, in goes second and third. Peter Smith stays out.
Yeah, so probably a good call from Peter if he's just made a little mistake.
Oh, dear.
It's very wide there. That was Dean Hunt, I believe, and I know from experience you can get a penalty being that far wide, so we've got to watch out for that as well. See if anyone's going to get pinged for the pit entry here, because the white line is brutal, and as they all funnel their way through now, how does this pan out?
Oh, it wasn't contact for Dean Hunt, at least initially. He actually lost it through the second last corner. There wasn't any contact from Fenson behind.
Yeah, very, very close between all of those guys, but I'm sure Fenson won't be complaining by any means necessary as all our drivers come out of the pits now. How is the change of order? Well, the change of order is fairly significant. Henry Fenson is going to be the first out of the pits from what I can see. Owen Pirate in second place. Daniel Finney, a good jump in third, as Dean Powell plummets to fourth out of the pits. So our race leader, of course, punching that hole in the air for all our drivers for the past 19 laps, is paying the price for it now.
Well, it's the lane transit time that really tells the story. His pit stop wasn't that much worse than anyone else's, but compare the pair. Henry Fenson, 39.3 seconds. Dean Powell, 44.3.
Yeah, that's a big loss, isn't it? So Dean Powell, somewhere in the pit box, has had a little bit of an issue here as we get a little note from race control. Car 47, Dean Hunt, black flag penalty, unsafe pit entry, which is a shame to see. As I'm just taking a look, I don't see the black flag on my end currently, but that could potentially be something on race control's end anyway. So we'll see how that all pans out over the next couple of laps.
Swanpole stopped on pit exit. He's asking for a tow. Hearing standby from race control. Peter Smith saying that he's going to pit this lap. This will be interesting.
That's got to be a safety car, surely, if there's a car blocking the entirety of the pit exit. I genuinely think he's parked that so perfectly in the middle of the road that...
No safety car.
Ooh, okay, so nothing happening there. So he gets a lucky break. I guess he was close enough to pit exit. They were able to push him back, which is great to see. Our race will continue on, and Peter Smith probably dodges a bullet there as well. Of course, if a safety car comes out, we use the automated iRacing safety car, which uses a bit of an old NASCAR system, but all in all, what that basically means is you can't pit until the entire field has been collected, essentially. And what that would mean for Peter Smith is he would go from the race lead, pretty much guaranteed to fall behind Jacques Swanpole all the way down in 17th place.
Yeah, and that would be huge for Peter Smith if it worked out like that. But he is going to come into the pits now under green flag conditions, and we'll see what the transit time is like for him here. Remember, it's about a 20.8 second pit stop and around about 39 to 39 and a half seconds. That's the optimal numbers that you need for pit lane transit as well. Eric Fenson at the moment in 8th spot, and he's got John Bradshaw right behind him. It looks like we're going to be getting a replay of these two in a minute. Something happened between them. Peter Smith in, and he is joined by David Turnbull and Dylan Walker. That means that everyone has now come in for their first pit stop. Fenson, meanwhile, at a good rate of speed out on the racetrack, will take the race lead back from Peter Smith, who will re-emerge behind these two.
Yeah, but still relatively close. I think he may just about fall out of draft range. But I was a bit worried for a little while there that maybe he'd fall a bit further back, but he has managed to get away with that. As we go back and take a look at what's happened to Bradshaw, and I think Fenson here, a big battle in towards turn number 4. Late on the brakes goes Bradshaw, overshoots, contact on the exit as well. And a little bit of chaos there, all in all at the mid-corner, but Henry Fenson, or Eric Fenson, sorry, will continue out in front. So good little exchange there, even if there was a bit of a bump there. But play on.
Yeah, play on indeed, but they don't want to battle too hard, otherwise that'll bring Peter Smith right into the thick of it. Now, this is the point where if you're the following car in the slipstream, you might want to stay there. Remember, they are going to want to do a splash and dash at the end, and any measures you can take to shorten that final pit stop will pay dividends for you.
Yeah, absolutely will, as Fenson and Bradshaw continue their little battle. And what you're going to see here on the replay is Eric Fenson just running a little bit wide on the exit, gets that gravel, and gravel with how thick it is as well, just no traction speed whatsoever. And that loss in speed, well, John Bradshaw, it's an open door, he can walk straight on through. So he promotes himself back up into 8th place currently in their little battle, which has had more twists and turns than a little novel at the moment. So it's been great to see that exchange still happening as Henry Fenton and Owen Pyra continue their fight as well, which is great to see. Coming across the start lap number 23, I do believe. So we'll see how this little battle continues. We'll go side by side as well. And yeah, see how this goes, as I believe I'm on replay.
Yeah, indeed. We're looking at both Fensons at the moment in being the protagonists in their respective battles. Henry, of course, holding on to the lead of the race, and Eric Fenson trying to chase down John Bradshaw. I see some smoke in the background. It looks like Dean Powell has had a spin coming out of the hairpin.
Yeah, not ideal for Dean Powell. Was leading for such a long time in this race so far, but it's all starting to fall away just a little bit. Now finds himself under pressure. Leith McClymont behind, and Vinny Nguyen on his recovery drive as well. Of course, we saw him have that big issue at turn number 1 on lap 1. But what exactly has happened here? Going in towards turn number 3, and just clips the anti-cut curb, bursts into wheel spin, and throws him around. That's so easy to do, and you're not a sim racer unless you've done that at some point. It is so easy to do, and sadly, Dean Powell just falling victim of that today. So that's a shame for him. But can still hold his head strong for the remaining half of this race, because he has driven fantastically so far, all in all.
Yeah, he has indeed. I suppose the only cars that wouldn't react like that if you hit the anti-cut there are the front-wheel drive ones, the TCRs and the Renault Clio, Volkswagen Jetta as well, but that doesn't really produce enough power to be unsettled at all. Meanwhile, Fenson continuing to defend here from Owen Pyra. This is going to be an interesting battle for the lead. They're both looking very quick. Peter Smith, who is currently on his lonesome behind them, doesn't have any slipstream and isn't quite able to match their lap times at the moment.
No, not at all. There's definitely a bit of separation at the moment, but it has to be said that the two guys out front, Fenton and Pyra, are pushing the pace pretty hard, as both are in the low 27s at the moment, which is a pace we only saw matched really by Pyra in that first stint of the race. So Fenson and Pyra, of course Pyra just continuing his pace that he had early on, but Henry Fenson has upped the pace a little bit as well. No one else really in the same league at the moment, so these guys just shows how hard they're working. But is that a result of just burning the tires a little bit more and they're going to be paying the price a bit later in the race? That's what we'll have to try and wait and find out. But at the moment, they're lapping consistently tenths of a second quicker than the rest of our top 5 really.
Yeah, looking very consistent up the front of this field, but again, they've got to be careful of snaps through the middle of corners. I saw one almost happen there for Henry Fenson, and now Owen Pyra, well within the slipstream, not quite close enough to get the move done at the hairpin, but you see he's potentially just lifting out of the throttle a little bit. Here's the run coming through the first turn, and yep, there was a little snap there for Henry.
Yeah, big little moment there, so bit of a shame for Henry, but he'll continue pushing on, I am sure. And we'll see how this all pans out over the next couple of laps as we go back to Eric Fenson now, who continues his ever-long battle with John Bradshaw. Bradshaw just trying to get in the draft, close up a little bit more, and see if they can exchange places one more time, as Vinny Nguyen, one of the drivers, exchanging places with Mark Foster. So Vinny Nguyen's comeback drive continuing on, and I have to say, it has been a great drive, because I did note at one point he found himself 28 seconds off the race lead. Now, only 19, so it shows just how much pace Vinny had and could have been a potential favourite for tonight's race had it not been for that little incident at lap 1.
Yeah, the only thing that is going to potentially promote Nguyen to a top 5 position at this point is a safety car that bunches up the field. So, I mean, he's going to try his best to work his way up, but in the last, that's 37, 38 minutes, he has made up about 10 seconds. Of course, the race is only an hour long. It's nearly 2/3 done, so he would need the race to last another half hour, keeping this pace if he wanted to try and jet towards victory. But here we go then, out of turn 1. Looks like Leith McClymont just getting a little bit of a better run out of turn 1, but Nguyen sticking in the slipstream, coming down this long, flat-out section down to the hairpin. I absolutely love this track, the way it flows. So much time to be made up in these braking zones.
Yeah, there definitely is. I think this track's one of those circuits where you either really gel well with it or you don't gel with it. And unfortunately, I'm on the other side of the coin here, Reese. I don't gel well with it. As I'm just seeing Daniel Finney losing a spot there. And was that maybe a slowdown? Because he's fallen behind both Bradshaw and Fenson now. So something happening to Daniel Finney on this particular lap as this battle rages on behind, which involves the likes of Dylan Walker and David Turnbull as they work their way through this very high-speed section. But we'll get a Südspeed replay. And now what has happened to poor Daniel Finney as, a big moment late under brakes. And I'm thinking he just missed a brake marker.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of a lockup as well. Very close avoidance there by one of the Fensons there. Meanwhile, looks like Vinnie Nguyen has briefly managed to make his way past Leith McClymont, but Leith is coming back at him, coming into turn 1. Does Vinny decide to yield? No, he doesn't. He goes around the outside of turn 1, which we don't usually see.
Oh.
And he's made it work. Someone spun. It's Dean Powell again.
Dean. Oh, I hate to see this for him because he drove so well in the first half of this race. But sadly, it's all just starting to go a little bit wrong for him. Of course, you can see he's probably beating himself up ever so slightly there. I'm sure we'll get a replay and see what exactly has transpired there. But yeah, very aggressive from Vinnie Nguyen to go around the outside at turn number 1. And great respect as well from Leith McClymont to leave the racing room. But Dean Powell, he's going to carry a lot of speed in. And those anti-cut curbs are brutal tonight, Reese.
Yeah, firm suspension in these cars. And of course, not as sophisticated as their LMP2 and GTP brethren. It's certainly a bit of a difficult ask to make your way cleanly around a track like this with anti-cut curbs that brutal. At least you can see them coming, a bright yellow compared to everything else. As coming out of these corners, it looks like Dylan Walker moving past Mark Foster there and back into the top 10 after what's been a bit of a rough race for him so far. That's the thing about this race, Bo. It looks like just about everyone who started in the top 10 has had some kind of issue along the way.
Well, there's not a single driver in this field that's actually stayed where they qualified. Every single person has shuffled to some extent, with Mark Foster and David Turnbull being our most recent drivers to shuffle positions, as that little exchange happens at turn number 1. But yeah, most positions gained. Owen Pyro, that's probably no surprise, from 11th all the way up to 2nd place. But the likes of Henry Fenson, Daniel Finney, Leith McClymont, and Eric Fenson as well, all having great drives. And let's not forget Daniel Finney as well. He's gained 7 spots, and he only recently just lost 2 as well. So he also at one stage had gained 9 places in this field. So for anyone that says you can't pass at Red Bull Ring, you definitely can. But you can also have some pretty big snaps of oversteer too.
Yeah, and that turn seems to be the biggest place to have it happen. It's a descending, flowing left-hander. It's very easy to lose the rear coming into there. Track temperature dropping as well, down to 36 degrees Celsius. We are running in afternoon conditions, and the sun is past its most blazing. So I think we're going to see the track temperature potentially drop by another degree by the time we get to the checkered flag. That will certainly help tyre life just a little bit. That is, if the drivers are safe enough to fight with at the end.
Yep, that is very true. Of course, there is so much to be factored in here. I just want to quickly note as well, you currently see the gap between Fenson and Pyra has blown out just a little bit. Last lap around, Fenson did a 26.8 compared to a 27.4 for Pyra. The difference though, Fenson had an off-track penalty on that particular lap. So his ranking in the incident points at the moment is Henry Fenson. So great pace out front, leading laps as well. But got to be careful of those 30 incident points as well, because I've seen that a couple times from our number 10 driver, where he has set a very quick lap, but it hasn't scored as his best lap, meaning there was an incident point scored at some point in the lap.
Yeah, take it easy. You don't want to be getting close to the incident limit with still 17 minutes remaining in the race. It's going to be quite difficult to recover from that if you do get a drive through very late on, and very close to getting a slowdown on the exit of the final corner as well. It just seems like drivers are having a lot of issues keeping the front end in line coming out of that last corner. You know, Red Bull Ring, for being as fast a circuit as it is, it really depends on having a super pointy front end just to get through these tight corners.
It definitely does, and of course the suspension geometry is going to be quite weird as well, with such a soft front end and such a stiff rear end on all these cars, because of course you need the mechanical grip for those slow corners that we've just witnessed at turn number 3 as well. So the entire setup and how you would go about setting up one of these LMP3 cars around this circuit is totally different to what you would expect at a more traditional circuit. Let's say a Nürburgring, a Monza, or something of that likes, where it's a more traditional GP track, whereas this is such a weird flow to it. It's all high speed on the straights and everything. You've got some medium speed corners through here. You need the mechanical grip. You need the front end to be working, as you mentioned. It's a track where you're constantly demanding so many different things from the car, and it just can't do everything at once.
No, it's always a bit of a compromise you have to make in setting up your car for this track, and well, definitely be something the drivers reflect on, especially coming into Zolder. It's going to be interesting to see how everyone tackles that one. Meanwhile, we see Dylan Walker here trying to make his way into 8th place. Leith McClymont leaves the door open on the inside, and it could be a dive at the second last corner here for Dylan Walker. It looks like Leith is not going to fight it too hard, leaves him the room on the inside, goes off the track even, a little bit too deep into the corner there. That gives an opportunity to David Turnbull to try and make up a place as well.
Yeah, it definitely does. We'll see what Turnbull can do as he pulls out ever so slightly. And I think probably just showing that he's not going to go for a move into towards turn number 1 and just sit behind for the next couple of moments. But a bit of a rough exit for McClymont there out of turn number 1. Maybe Turnbull's regretting this decision. Well, think about a move up to the inside of turn number 3. Of course, it's a long straight uphill as well. So that a little bit of a draft effect is all the more powerful. It's a bit of a compression lock for McClymont is all she wrote. A fairly easy pass all in all. For David Turnbull, up the inside, another place gained, and up to position number 9 now.
Yeah, lovely stuff there from David Turnbull. Let's see if he can continue that recovery and get a bit closer to the top 5 and at least negate the unfortunate goings-on that he's had in this race. Under 15 minutes to go, and the battle for the lead is still on between Henry Fenson and Owen Pyra, but I think foremost on their minds at the moment, the splash and dash. Doesn't look like they've backed off any in terms of pace. I don't see anyone lifting and coasting into braking zones, and considering everything that's gone on so far in this race, it looks like going safety car free is a very strong possibility. So maybe what they're trying to do here is just eke out the fuel tank as much as possible. Really, the advantage is with Pyra at this point. He can afford to save a little bit of fuel there in the slipstream of Henry Fenson.
Yeah, he definitely can, and that's going to be critical because, of course, we're 12 laps into this stint currently. We're expecting at least 10 laps to go, according to my timing screen. That's 22 laps from their last pit stop, which we didn't see anybody do. We saw 21 laps, but we never saw 22. So currently, I don't know if any of these drivers are going to be able to fuel save all the way to the end, because just watching the speed trace of Owen Pyra, yes, he's in the slipstream, but I'm not seeing any lift and coast. And of course, we were expecting the realm about 7 liters needing to be saved in order to save that final splash and dash. So I think for our top 2 at the least, we're not seeing any pit stops being avoided with this current strategy. They're both racing pretty hard. As you can see, the speed trace into these final few corners, that's just normal racing speeds. That's not any lift and coast by any means. So Owen Pyra and Henry Fenson, this is definitely a battle to the end.
Yeah, looks like it. Let's pay attention to the braking zone here. Yeah, you see that? He was lifting just a little bit there into turn 1. It's those micro lifts, you know? It's not all about lifting and coasting 300 meters before the corner. John Bradshaw is going to be the first of our runners to take that second pit stop, it seems. But it's just those few milliliters of fuel saved per lap by just getting off the throttle a tiny bit earlier before you get on the brakes. That's what I think is likely going to help Owen Pyra just get a slightly quicker pit stop when the time comes.
Yeah, absolutely, because of course I'm just talking about avoiding that final splash and dash, whereas you make a very good point. Make that final pit stop just a little bit shorter and you can gain a lot of time. You can also lose a lot of time if you make a little mistake with turn number 4, but no harm, no foul. He will continue playing on for the next couple of laps. But a nice little move here up the inside. I believe, is that John Bradshaw? Of course it's John Bradshaw, out of the pits and already making moves with Mark Foster.
Yeah, remaining in the top 10. So first driver to take 2 pit stops here. Actually, Dean Powell took his second pit stop 4 laps ago, so I'm going to delete that thought from my mind. Let's see when the rest of them decide to come in. We're rapidly approaching 10 minutes to go. I think we might see a flurry of pit stops to end the race here in the final 10 minutes.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Reese. It's going to be a lot of drivers being like, oh boy, my fuel gauge is getting very, very low. I should probably top that up. But I wonder if there's any dark horses. Of course, Peter Smith, we've been talking a little bit about his just lack of pace. He hasn't quite been there. Yeah, last little while, he's been falling away from our top 2. The gap now stands at 2.9 seconds. Is there a reason his pace hasn't been quite there? Eric Fenson, we saw great pace from him earlier. He's only doing 27.3s. Is there perhaps a little bit more in the tank for Eric as well? Is he fuel saving to avoid that final stop? There are so many little factors here, and which one of them is going to pan out towards the end? We hit just 10 minutes to go now. Fenson, Pyra, Smith, you try and pick a winner, because I sure can't.
Yeah, I can't pick a winner either. This is, we're waiting with bated breath to see just how this race turns out. The 3-way fight between Walker, Turnbull, and McClymont. David Turnbull trying his best to make a recovery. One of many drivers who we can add that label to in this race. Currently in 8th, looking at 7th, and I don't know, it seems to me like him and Dylan Walker pretty well matched on pace, but potentially Turnbull was a little bit faster. Walker was incredibly quick at Aragon last round. Just doesn't seem to be quite there here at Red Bull Ring, having a little bit more trouble with it than he did with the Spanish track we visited 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, of course, a very different circuit style compared to Aragon is the Red Bull Ring, so that could be a factor as well. But also, David Turnbull, we know he's taking his second pit stop. So, has he? No, he's only taken 1, sorry. So I'm getting my my drivers confused. But I was just going to say that, oh, here we go. A little bit of an exchange here happening up the front. Henry Fenson going very defensive from Owen Pyra. And Pyra can't do it around the outside, which we've seen from a few drivers. So they're going to continue as they were. But yeah, sorry about that, guys. I was getting a little bit confused before, but no, we're still waiting for our pit stops for those drivers before, the likes of Turnbull and Walker. So we'll see how that all pans out. The only driver to take 2 pit stops currently is John Bradshaw and Dean Powell, and Jacques Swanpole as well, who is currently a lap down. But for the rest of our field, still awaiting a pit stop from them all. And currently not seeing any of them in the text chat saying that they're going to be diving into the pits anytime soon. And our top 3 do pass on through as well. So this strategy game is just going to keep playing out for a little bit longer, but time is running out with just 6 laps to go in this race.
Yeah, so when does the pit stop happen? If it is going to happen, I mean, we were expecting it 7 litres was the figure that we were given that drivers would have to take in the second pit stop. But I mean, if they're making the tank last as long as this, I mean, really, what we should expect is for the pit stops to happen at the end of this lap, potentially.
Yeah, realistically, but at the same time, our race leaders, their pace has gone from a 27.0 essentially to a 27.5. So our first two have dropped by half a second a lap. On the flip side, Peter Smith has just set his fastest lap of the race last lap around on a 26.6, taking some, 9/10 of a second out of first and second. So as Peter Smith played a little bit of a strategy card here, fuel saved through the entire first part of his second stint, whereas the rest of the field, including Henry Fenton and Owen Pyra, are now doing a little bit of a panic fuel save.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because, I mean, we've been keeping an eye on this first and second place battle. We haven't really been giving Peter much mind. He's just been sitting there in the background the whole time, roughly, 2.5 seconds back. There is potential that he's playing the long game here and just waiting to see if something happens to the leaders out on track, or when they come in for their pit stop, he might be able to really cut them short on the pit lane transit time. Daniel Finney, meanwhile, setting the fastest lap out of 5th place. He is looking incredibly quick, 126.4, and he's still trying to chase down Eric Fenson for 4th place, as it's a little bit wide there from Henry Fenson. Pyra gets up the inside on the exit of the hairpin.
Yep, this is on now. Side by side, there will go. How hard do these guys fight it? Do they want the race lead? Do they want to sit behind the other? I say they want to fight it, because you can see how aggressive Fenson is on the brakes. But the issue is that Pyra's got the line, and he's got the position for now. So a little bit of a crack in the armor for Henry Fenson, and he drops down to 2nd place now. I think this will be very telling for our fuel strategy. If they keep fighting this hard, they're going to basically put their hand up and say that, hey, I've got enough fuel to finish. We're racing on track now. There's no need for the pits, as we did see a little bit of a moment through turn number 5 for Owen Pyra, but they do all recover as well. But the gap between 1st and 3rd down to just 1.5 seconds now, as Pyra into the pits. Pyra definitely can't make it. He's going one more lap. What does this mean for Henry Fenson? What does this mean for Peter Smith?
What does it mean indeed? Well, I think with Pyra jumping in early, I would expect Fenson and Smith to come in at the end of this lap. And I would have thought that Fenson would be the one to pit first. He was the one punching the hole in the air. He would have been the one using more fuel, but maybe Owen Pyra is trying to get some kind of undercut. Not really a tire undercut, but potentially just get into clear air and try his best to make up a little extra time on track. Vinnie Nguyen, meanwhile, that's not good for him. A couple of technical issues there as Pyra emerges in front of him.
Yes, indeed. So we'll see if those guys decide to fight at all. Of course, one has taken their pit stop, the other is still fighting on through. But nonetheless, Peter Smith now 1 second behind our race leader. And we'll see what he can do against Henry Fenson. Which one of these drivers is going to pit next? I would have agreed, though. Henry has been in the lead the entire time through. So he should have been burning the most fuel. But nonetheless, only on lap 19 of his stint currently. So we did see them go up to 21 laps last time around, which if they run that all the way out would make them pit on the white flag, I believe. So Henry Fenson into the pits. Peter Smith continues to stay out. So Henry Fenson not going to go all the way to the white flag. He's going to choose to respond here to Owen Pyra. So how does this pan out? We saw Owen Pyra have a pit stop of just 6.3 seconds. Very fast indeed. And what can Henry Fenson do? 4.8 seconds. Henry Fenson, despite being the leader throughout that entire stint, a 1.5 seconds faster in the pits, and he's going to come out well ahead of Owen.
Oh, he hits the wall on pit exit!
Oh, I don't believe it! He had that so wrapped up. If it was to go to the end and Peter Smith couldn't make it, that would have been the race there and then. But he slams the wall and gets a black flag in the process.
Oh, that's an unsafe re-entry to the racetrack for Henry Fenson. This is how it happened. Bit of understeer up the hill, just smashes it. And then, unfortunately, he was just beyond the white line. Oh, no.
That is a nightmare, and all I can describe for Henry Fenson is heartbreak. That has to be devastating for him. But the race goes on for the rest of our competitors, unfortunately, and I've got to turn my eye to Peter Smith as Dean Hunt dives into the pits. But what does Peter Smith do? Goes
Stays
one
out.
more lap. There's 2.5 minutes to go. Now, in the first stint, we saw drivers, including Peter Smith, go 21 laps. Actually, if he filled up all the way to the
They're
end,
gonna make it.
he's going to make it. He's only on lap 18 of his stint. So if he did 21 in the first stint, I think Peter Smith can make this. And judging by his pace, doing 26.9s with an average 5-lap speed of 26.8s, I think he's good on fuel, Reese.
Yeah, I think he is too. All of the numbers are adding up for me. And with an 18.9 second lead over Henry Fenson, he's got a black flag to serve, so more like a 19.5 second lead over Owen Pyra. Even if he has to crawl in the last lap or so, I don't think he's going to be in danger.
No, not at all. And if he is just a little bit short right now, like you say, he's got 18 seconds. You can lift and coast basically the entire track if you need to. At this point, as we see a little battle here break out between Dylan Walker and David Turnbull side by side. And towards turn number 4, Walker going to hold the inside. Very close squeeze around the outside from Turnbull. We've not seen anyone go around the outside all race long, basically, through that corner. Turnbull, with just 1 lap to go, just about may pull it off.
Whoa.
As Walker going to perform a drift show, throw it into the kitty litter, and that is a shame there. And does that open the door potentially for Eric Fenson behind? It doesn't, but a disaster there nonetheless, as our drivers cross the finish line there with the white flag flying. Just a minute left in this race. This should be the white flag, and Peter Smith is not pitting. So white flag in the air. Peter Smith is your leader by 18 seconds.
Slow down for Henry Fenson.
I'm wondering if he's just not fighting this because he knows the black flag is hanging over his head. But I've got to say, would you not be better serving the penalty? Because post-race penalties in iRacing are notoriously brutal. If I was Henry Fenson, you would have served the black flag by now, surely, because the post-race penalties can sometimes be minutes. So a drive-through penalty would cost him 18 seconds, which is spitting out in 9th. And yes, 9th place sucks from how good his race was going, but it's better than finishing potentially nearly 15th. As side-by-side contact between these two. Black flag or not for Fenson, he's going to fight this one.
He is indeed. Well, we'll see how they finish at the end, but it looks like last 2 corners for Peter Smith, making it to... Oh, no! Okay, they come together at the end, but
Out
Peter
of the final
Smith...
corner, though, Peter Smith does all the fuel-saving numbers he needs to, and it is the checkered flag in round 5 for the 69 car with delivery of the Williams. But in second place, we're going to see David Turnbull from absolutely out of nowhere. And that little move he put on just a few moments ago promotes him to second over Dylan Walker, who inherits third over Owen Pyra, who will limp home 4th after contact with a driver who had a black flag penalty. Reese, I don't know if we've heard the last of that one.
Yeah, I don't know either. Well, the celebrations are on there for Peter Smith. We're going to see here on board with Owen Pyra exactly what happened. I was looking away from the production feed at Peter Smith when this happened, so this is going to be the first time I really can dissect this incident, Bo. I have no idea what's unfolding here.
No, unfortunately, Reese, neither do I, but we can see here through turn number 4 on the power, and I believe it's Owen Pyra were on board with. You can see Fenson on the outside there. A little bit hard to see, but big move up the inside. And snap of oversteer. He corrects it. Pyra, the innocent victim there. There was nothing he could have done. But I wonder if the stewards may intervene here, because yes, they were racing for position on the final lap. I understand that. But there was a black flag hanging over the head of Fenson there. And he has just cost Owen Pyra fairly badly.
Yeah, certainly did. Wow. So Henry Fenson with the post-race penalty has dropped to 14th place. And if he had served that black flag before the finish, like you said, Bo, he probably still would have finished a few positions higher than that. But these are the race results. What a drive from Smith.
Oh, absolutely. That was a fantastic masterclass in fuel saving. He did everything he needed to do in that first stint as well. Of course, he was the one that extended the stint initially longer than anyone else, and then he extended the second stint. So everything he needed to do, he achieved, and a well-deserved win over David Turnbull and Dylan Walker, who for most of the race found themselves lurking in the lower top 10 or even the sort of midsection of the top 5. But out of nowhere, those two score a podium at the expense of Owen Pyra, who, despite the poor result, well, not the poor result, but the unfortunate result after what his race was looking like, I think should still be very proud of how he drove tonight, with Daniel Finney in the Bean Machine in position number 5. Eric Fenson brings it home for a great recovery drive, it has to be said, in position number 6, ahead of John Bradshaw, Brenton Morris, Leith McClymont, who scores a top 10 on debut, so well done there to the 317, and Dean Powell, who had a very up and down race, but again should hold his head fairly high for leading so many laps tonight.
Yeah, certainly should. Vinnie Newen finishes in 11th spot after starting second. It all went wrong for him in the braking zone at turn 1 on lap 1. Mark Foster will come across the line in 12th. That's 4 places gained for him. 5 spots gained for Michael Schroeder. Henry Fenson, of course, with the penalty, demoted to 14th. Dean Hunt, well, he was racing pretty well in the top 10 at some point, but unfortunately dropping back. Andrew Proctor a lap down. Jacques Swanpole 2 laps down. Sean Bonici retiring 30 laps from the end. And Brandon Groach, unfortunately, all the way down there early on in the race. Got pole position, was leading, and then a technical issue took him out of contention. That is a real shame there for him, but opposite of a shame for Peter Smith, Bo, who's the first of our driver interviews.
Yep, he definitely is, and I don't know whether to call him Peter Smith or the Fuel Whisperer at this point. Peter, how long were you sitting on that fuel strategy for, and did you know it was going to pay off that big?
Yeah, I practiced a fair bit. I didn't know whether I could make it or not. I didn't know whether there was going to be safety cars that would get in the way. It was, I made a decision probably about an hour before the race to go with it. And my thought was, if my pace is okay, then I'll stick with it. And my pace is pretty good. So I went, rightio, that's it. I'm just going to fuel save the whole race and try and get to the end, and it paid off. So I was actually, I was looking at the fuel numbers, wondering whether the guys in front were going to pit. And I'm like, no, they must have to pit, because I did the 2 stints without fuel saving, and it's 2 or 3 laps. But I just, you don't know until it happens, until it comes off. So you always doubt it. But yeah, the strategy paid off, and the speed was there enough to stay where I needed to. Like, obviously, if I was, half a second slower, the strategy goes out the window. But to be able to keep the speed to the car was the critical part of it with the fuel saving. So really happy to finally get a win.
No, absolutely. You drove a very good race. I'll get you to do a bit of self-analysis here as well, Peter. Yeah. Do you feel those longer races suit you a bit more than perhaps the sprint format this series is perhaps more known for?
Yes and no. I mean, that race certainly suited me. I was obviously Canada I was quite good at as well. I think that race there was about fuel saving and keeping the speed of the car, and I was good at that. The sprint races, I think I'm okay. I think one of my biggest issues with sprint races, well, I mean, maybe it's not an issue, because some people are quite aggressive and make mistakes. So I think it's that balance between being aggressive and and keeping on the track versus just biding your time and being patient and working out the car in front, what speed they've got, where you can get them. I mean, you might have seen me following, I think, one of the Fenton brothers there, and I was just patient. I basically just waited and waited and waited, and I was glad I was fuel saving because it kept me just enough distance under brakes that I wasn't ever going to run into him. But I was a lot faster in that last corner, and I could get beside him. But again, I had to fuel save, and that then didn't allow me to sort of take the move. I could have one lap, maybe had a dive, but I just didn't see the need for it. I had a plan in my head, and I thought if he gives up the spot into turn one, I'll take it. But he didn't, and that's fine. And I thought, well, I'll just keep sitting behind him. So it was really a big patience game, which paid off for me tonight.
Well, you drove a great race, Peter. Before I let you go, is there anybody you'd like to thank?
Oh, PJ's Bar and Grill, Carlton Draft, and Coles for providing the snacks for the barbie.
Well, I hope I'm invited, mate. Nonetheless, we will see you in the next race, hopefully on the podium there as well.
Yeah, cheers, guys. And great racing by everyone tonight. It was really good race etiquette there with those guys in front. So, yeah, really good.
Fantastic. Thank you, Peter. And hopefully we'll get the chance to speak to him in the near future as well. But Reese, somebody we didn't expect to be speaking to tonight, but throughout all the drama of the last lap, you're standing by with David Turnbull.
Yep, second place, and we've decided driver of the day as well. David, you have a Südspeed shirt in the mail. That was quite the recovery, especially after your first lap dramas.
Yeah, it was pretty exciting first few laps, and then just decided to move it into fuel saving from then on.
Yeah, it turns out the top three ended up being the ones that all took a single pit stop, so it was a pretty early decision from you then to get into fuel saving mode.
Yeah, I had a few sort of insider notes from Brandon, so we sort of knew what the fuel target was going to be, but I was going to wait for the race to settle down, but kind of got caught out, unfortunately. And then about 3 or 4 laps from the end, my internet nearly decided that it had enough as well, so that was pretty close.
Yeah, certainly. Well, regardless, it's another excellent result for you on the table here. And next round, we go to Circuit Zandvoort, a very different track to this one. What are your thoughts on that place?
I'll find out.
Righto, so that's going to be a new experience for you.
Yeah, I've seen it on TV, and I've raced the old one in a couple of cars, but I haven't done the new one yet.
All right, awesome. Well, hopefully we get a chance to talk to you at Zandvoort. Is there anyone that you'd like to thank for your result tonight?
Yeah, all of our sponsors, obviously. Juiced Energy, Simrigs, Racecraft, Hyperion Systems, Südspeed Gloves, Pet Door Company, and all the guys at Juiced Racing. And it was epic battles all the way through, and I enjoyed it after almost parking it early on, I have to say.
Yeah, certainly. From zero to hero for David Turnbull. Thanks for joining us, mate. Hopefully we get a chance to talk to you next time.
Great, thanks guys, and cheers for the driver of the day. That's awesome.
No worries at all. David Turnbull there. And finally, Bo, it looks like we have Dylan Walker, who recovered to finish in third place tonight.
Yes, indeed. We are indeed standing by with Dylan Walker. And Dylan, well, second round you've been racing the series and second podium for the night. Can't be too bad, hey, mate?
Yeah, cheers, guys. Yeah, it was just really difficult getting the strategy to work. The one stop was the way to go, I reckon. But yeah, holding on with the fuel and the tyres at the end as well was pretty difficult.
Was fuel saving around this track something you had practiced prior, or was that something that just sort of sprung to mind a little bit during the race when you saw others were perhaps doing a bit of lift and coast?
Yeah, it was the go from the start. We did a lot of practice, me and Brenton, trying to get the fuel down. Yeah, no. We were hoping that nobody else would figure it out, but unfortunately a couple of them did. So yeah, no, it was really good.
Well, that's awesome, mate. Now, next round we will go to the very high speed and very high banks of Zandvoort. What are your thoughts there? Is that a bit more perhaps suited to Aragon that you'd like, or is that a bit more of a circuit that perhaps you might struggle at?
Yeah, I think that's probably a bit more my speed, to be honest. Red Bull Ring was probably a weak point for me, but hopefully we can bounce back tomorrow, next week. For next race.
Well, fantastic, Dylan. Before I let you go, is there anybody you'd like to thank?
Part Logistics, D&T Precision, and First State Smoke Alarms, as well as all the Orel boys for giving us a hand.
Well, fantastic, Dylan. And we'll hopefully see you next fortnight's time to see if you can make it 3 podiums from 3 starts.
Yeah, cheers, guys. Thanks.
Well, there we go. Our podium finishes for round number 5 of the championship. And, well, that's what it's done to the championship. Sadly, not much has happened at the front of the championship with the non-appearance of Vondel and some very unfortunate tech issues for Brandon Groach. But Peter Smith, we can't ignore him. He's gained a bunch of points tonight to leap into, well, maintain 3rd, but extend his gap.
Yeah, exactly right. And, well, David Turnbull elevating himself up to 4th in the championship with that brilliant 2nd place finish. Peter Smith a little bit closer as well. Looks to me like Finney, Pyra, Bradshaw, that could potentially be a fight in the last couple of rounds of the championship. Edwards and Walker on 200 points apiece. Edwards, of course, not racing in this round, so he better get into it at Zandvoort if he wants to try and stay ahead there.
Well, absolutely. So we'll see how this all pans out in just a fortnight's time on the 14th of November. Same time, same place, different track, different format. There'll be plenty of exciting things to happen there on the high banks at Zandvoort. Of course, one of our first broadcasts on SimSpeed TV on the brand new circuit as well, which is very, very cool. How will the LMP3 cars tackle it? Well, we don't know yet, but we will in a fortnight's time. On behalf of Reese Gardner for being an awesome co-commentator tonight, of course, Jay Kennedy in the production booth. That's all from us at SimSpeed TV. Of course, don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below and let us know your thoughts as well in the live chat. But from now, that is all from us, and we will see you in a fortnight's time at Zandvoort.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.